everyone. We're ready to get started. So excited to be here. I'm Zaheera Valani. I'm VP of Engineering at Databricks, and I'm very excited to be co-presenting with Jamie Couture from Nasdaq. We're going to be talking about how delta sharing unlocks the value of your data for partners and customers. So before we get started, I just wanted to ask a few questions. Raise your hand if you're already sharing data with partners and customers. Almost every hand went up. Raise your hand if you wish this was easier. All hands still up. And one last question. I'm curious, how many people here are already using delta sharing? Awesome, we had a few hands up. Not that many, probably about a little bit about half. So you know what, you're in the right session. In today's session, we're gonna walk through sharing and collaboration use cases and some of the challenges associated with that. We're gonna walk through delta sharing as a foundation for sharing and collaboration. And then I'll walk through some internal and external sharing use cases. And I'll do a demo of Databricks to Databricks sharing to show you how easy that is in the platform. And what I'm really excited about is then Jamie is gonna walk through a use case that him and his team have been building out at Nasdaq, and then show you the flexibility the platform provides. So many of our customers are using the data intelligence platform for sharing and collaboration. And at Databricks, our goal is to be able to make this as seamless and easy as possible for you. Now, we know that you're building the applications for the future and you want to be able to share data. And so we've talked to a lot of customers to really understand what is their motivation for sharing data and what are some of the challenges that they run into. There's two big things that we hear. One is that external data is very valuable. There's no way that you can build everything that you need to without getting data from your partners and customers. And the second thing that we hear about is that the ability to be able to collaborate on share on more than just structured data, being able to share non-structured data, being able to collaborate on AI models and notebooks. We also talk a lot to analysts and to understand what's happening in the market. And Gartner recently found that CDOs who have successfully executed data sharing initiatives are almost 2 times more effective in showing business value. And organizations that have implemented sharing and collaboration strategies see a boost in economic performance. Now, in our conversations with customers, collaboration is pervasive. We hear use cases from internal sharing. Organizations are sharing data across departments. They're doing that to be able to enable their data scientists, data engineers, and data analysts to get to insights faster. We see external sharing use cases, organizations collaborating on data with their partners. And we're seeing organizations like license third-party data to be able to enrich their existing data. And we're seeing the flip side of that, where organizations are generating new revenue streams by being able to monetize these new data products. In the last few years, we've also seen a lot of demand for confidential computing scenarios. This is for privacy-safe collaboration, like use cases like regulatory risk compliance, audience matching, etc. Now, we're seeing a newer use case emerge from our partners, actually. So where they're using delta sharing to be able to then access data from the SaaS applications and share that into the lakehouse. Databricks recently announced new strategic partnerships with leading global providers, like Aviva is a global leader in industrial software, Amperity is a customer data platform, Trade Desk for advertising and marketing, and then Tetra Science in the life sciences. Now, when we talk to customers to understand their use cases and their motivation, we've also been spending a lot of time to try and understand what are the challenges that they're facing with sharing and collaboration. So one of the things we hear about is every vendor has a different delivery method. These inconsistencies can then lead to delays and ultimately slow onboarding of new data. Data must be moved and copied across companies. And anytime you're moving or copying data around, you'll face data duplication issues, stale data, and there's even privacy risks with that. The one that we hear most commonly about is that different companies use different platforms, and it's not very seamless to be able to collaborate across these different platforms. And one of the other things that we hear about that I talked about even a little bit earlier is that in some of these platforms, it's not easy to be able to share unstructured data. So this is like, your AI models or notebooks, not being able to easily share those to unlock AI use cases. Do these challenges resonate? Because when I asked, was it easier? Yeah, I'm seeing some head nods. They resonate. So what you need is a platform that makes it easy to have an open approach for maximal reach and impact for sharing and collaboration. So what does that look like? You need a unified mechanism to be able to onboard data and AI so that you can get faster data onboarding. You need secure live sharing of data and AI assets so that you don't have to deal with data replication or data movement. And you need an open and cross-platform collaboration so that you can meet your customers and partners where they are on the platform that they're at. And of course, being able to share non-structured data like volumes, AI models as well. For these reasons and to achieve these outcomes, we've been evolving the data intelligence platform. So with the platform, you can share data across clouds, regions, and platforms. You can share more than just data. You can share AI models, you can share notebooks, and even solution accelerators. And of course, all of this needs to be done in a secure and well-governed way, and that's with Unity Catalog. At the foundation of our sharing capabilities is Delta sharing. And built on Delta sharing, we have other collaboration components. There's the Databricks Marketplace. The Databricks Marketplace is an open marketplace for data and AI assets. There also has functionality like private exchanges so that you can select which organizations to share the data with. It doesn't have to be in the public. And then there's Databricks Clean Rooms for privacy-safe collaboration. In this session, we're going to focus on Delta sharing. So 3 years ago, we announced the open source Delta sharing project. This is the industry's first open protocol for secure data sharing. So one way to think about it is that on one hand, you have data providers on one side, and then on the other side, you have the data consumers. And in the middle, you have the data sharing protocol. And so now the data consumers, using any compatible client, can access the data and AI assets. And when I say compatible clients, like these are tools that we're using, you're using every day, or people in your organization are using every day. Tools like Excel, BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, Apache Spark has support for this, Pandas. And so because Delta sharing is open source, the community has been able to add support for these in these different tools, and so that they can understand the protocol and get access to the data. And again, because it's open source, we're continuing to see more and more clients adopt Delta sharing protocol. So the ecosystem is growing very, very fast. We have 16,000 plus data recipients who are using Delta sharing. We've seen a 300% year-over-year growth in monthly active Delta shares between data providers and recipients. And 40% of the recipients are outside of Databricks. So in the tools that I just talked about, like Excel, Power BI, Tableau, open source Spark, the recipients are on those other platforms and able to access the data. Matej talked a little bit about this morning. We're really excited at the number of organizations, industry-leading partners that are adopting Databricks for collaboration. Everything from Imperity, which is a customer data platform, to be able to share data with their customers. Shutterstock is a provider in the marketplace, and they're using Delta sharing to be able to share image data. And also Health Verity is sharing healthcare-related data sets through the marketplace. So incredible breadth of providers across the various industries. So an area I wanted to spend some time on is to talk about how delta sharing enables sharing of more than just data. So there is AI model sharing. With AI model sharing, you can train your models in one place and share it anywhere. Volumes are a new object type in Unity Catalog. And with volumes, think of it as a collection of directories and files. So with volume sharing, you can share a large collection of data in any format so that you can unlock your ML and AI workloads. With streaming table and materialized view sharing, you can share fresh data from Databricks SQL and Delta Live tables. Sharing for Lakehouse Federation, this was an announcement this morning about Lakehouse Federation going GA and enabling Lakehouse Federation for sharing. Extremely powerful. With Lakehouse Federation, you can share external data directly from where it's stored. So using Lakehouse Federation, you can connect to data that's sitting in other platforms, other data warehouses, Snowflake, BigQuery, Redshift, and then be able to use Delta sharing to be able to share that as well. We're very excited about our partnership with Cloudflare. Customers that are using Cloudflare R2 storage are able to get cost savings because there are 0 egress fees. And then, of course, the Tableau Delta sharing connector, which I talked about a little bit earlier. This continues to expand the ecosystem of connectors for, and in this case, for analytics use cases. We're continuing to add capabilities to Delta sharing, again, to make it easier to share more than just data. Okay, so how can you leverage Delta sharing? If you want to be able to share a single copy of the data anywhere to these open connectors or even to other Databricks platforms, then Delta sharing is a way to do that. Delta sharing is flexible because you can share more than just data. Delta sharing also enables cross-cloud and cross-region sharing and enables cross-platform sharing. So Databricks to Databricks or Databricks to open, to any of those open protocols. So I thought let's walk through some use cases and then I'll walk through a demo of what this looks like. So let's start with this first use case. There's an organization, there are 2 business units, they're all using Databricks. Now, wouldn't we all love it if our organization environments actually resemble this? Of course, the reality is always a little bit different. There's on-prem and hybrid. But in this use case, this organization wants to be able to share data with a partner who's on the same cloud, but in a different region. And that partner is also on Databricks. I'm using partner here, but it could also be another business unit, right? And so in this case, they can leverage Delta sharing to be able to do Databricks to Databricks sharing. But it becomes really fun when you have partner number 2 who's not even, they're not on Databricks. Maybe they're on another cloud, or maybe they're even on premise. How do you share data with them? Delta sharing also works in these scenarios as well. You can leverage Delta sharing for this. So here's an example of a customer that's using Delta sharing. The Deutsche Börse Group, it's an international exchange organization. They're an innovative market infrastructure provider. And they have a wide range of products, services, and technologies. They organize safe and efficient markets for sustainable economies, and including leading exchanges like the Eurex. So they had several challenges to overcome. Historically, each of their businesses has grown on their own tech stack. And so they pursue a multi-cloud strategy. Sharing data across these siloed environments was complex and time-consuming, with data often being replicated. Add in on-prem and hybrid cloud environments, and becomes even more complex. And of course, they're in a highly regulated environment. So to connect these siloed environments without having to move to a single cloud environment or locking themselves into one vendor, they use Delta sharing. And so using Delta sharing on Databricks, they were able to streamline data sharing, and data sharing went from days to minutes. They're also a provider on the marketplace so that they can provide data products directly to their customers. The impact of this, they've seen 2 to 4 times faster insights by being able to save time for data sharing so that people inside the organization can get to insights faster. I wanted to show you a little bit of what this looks like and the capability, to demonstrate like the capabilities of delta sharing. So here, the circles are the cloud environment, and then you have the type, internal, external, or DTO, and then you have the delivery mechanism. So in this case, there's 2 regions in Azure, and then there's an environment in GCP. So with delta sharing, you can do cross-region internal sharing. So you can share from one cloud to the other cloud. It's internal, it's within the organization. You can also do cross-cloud sharing. So in this case, it's from Azure to GCP, and being able to do within the organization as well. Now they also need to be able to bring in data from other partners and third-party data to enrich their existing data. And so for that, again, you can leverage delta sharing for cross-cloud external sharing. And then there are a provider in the Databricks marketplace, so they want to be able to share data out to their customers. And again, you can leverage delta sharing to be able to do that. So all these different use cases, what I want to do now is I'm going to walk through a demo of how easy this is to be able to do within Databricks. So I'm just going to switch to the demo. So here I am. I'm in Databricks, and I'm starting in the provider view. So I'm starting as a provider. I've already created the recipient. I want to click on it so I can show you. And you can see that this environment, the provider is in Azure, and the recipient is outside of this cloud and is in AWS. So let's go back to Databricks. So here I can see, I just also wanted to show you guys how easy it is to create a recipient. You can click on New Recipient, you can put in the recipient name, you put in the sharing identifier, and you click on Create. I'm not going to do that because I've already done it, but I'll show you even to get the recipient ID. So I'm in the provider's workspace, but in the recipient's workspace, they would copy the sharing identifier and send that to me, and that's how I create a recipient. Okay, so once you've created a recipient, you want to be able to share the data with that recipient. So I'm going to click on Share Data, and I'm going to enter, and I'm doing a live demo here, so hopefully the demo gods are with me. External. Okay, and I'm going to click on Save and Continue. And then I can add data. This is the data that I want to be able to share. I'm just going to go ahead. So I have a table here, customer shopping data. I'm just going to go ahead and select the schema. Yep, I want to be able to share the whole schema. And save and continue. I can also share a notebook. I'm just going to skip it for time, but you can just easily select a notebook to share. And then I'm going to select the recipient. So we had our recipient in AWS. So I'm going to share it with that recipient, and I'm going to click on Share Data. And that's it. So from the provider side, I've created the recipient and I've shared the data. So now I'm going to switch to the recipient. Now I'm in the recipient's environment. And again, I'm in Catalog Explorer, I'm in Delta Sharing, and I'm looking at the Shared With Me view. And this was our provider, demo provider. So I can click on the demo provider. And I can see this is a share that we just created that has already showed up in the recipient's environment. So as a recipient, I'll go ahead and I'll create a catalog. Oh. Demo D2D catalog, and I will click on Create. Oh, you can tell I've tried this a few times, so I'll just put in the day. and my catalog is created. And I can come in and look at the table. And so we just, in a few minutes, shared data, less than a couple of minutes, shared data from one cloud to the other. And we could have shared notebooks, we can share volumes. So this is Databricks to Databricks sharing. It can be, internal within different business units, across regions, across clouds. It can be external, like we saw in the example of the Deutsche Börse visual. The same thing can apply as well. And this is just through the Databricks UI. So I'm going to go back to the slides because I wanted to show you how this works under the hood. So behind the, wrong screen. So behind the scenes, what was happening is when the data is on the recipient side, once we've shared the data on the recipient side, and the recipient now is wants to look at the data, the client will authenticate with the sharing server, and then the server will check and make sure that there's access permissions to that data, and it also audits it. It also puts it in the audit logs, and then it will return a pre-signed short-lived URL so that the recipient can get that link, and then the recipient will directly access the data in the underlying storage. And this works with D2O as well. In that case, there's a credential file that gets created. So this is how the live sharing and the zero copy of the data works. And so this was the example. The demo that we just did was Databricks to Databricks. I also wanted to give you an example of Atlassian. Atlassian they develop, Jira and Confluence. They're a partner of ours and a customer. And so what they were able to do using Delta sharing, they used the D2O APIs and they built it directly into their product. So you can see the screenshot here from their product where you can create a data share and then be able to share the data to these open clients in the ecosystem. And the impact of this is that their customers can now access this data in tools, in BI tools like Tableau, Power BI, or in the other compatible clients that we saw earlier. And so this is a really great example of D2O, and also, the functionality that we saw in the UI also works with APIs. And with that, I'm really excited to have Jamie come up on stage because he's going to walk through a really interesting use case of one of my favorite use cases of how Nasdaq is using D2O to be able to really fit their needs. And with that, I will hand it over to Jamie.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Hope you've been having an excellent Databricks Summit. This is my first time here. It's been pretty amazing. Great knowledge sharing. I love these sorts of sessions. We can all get together, as part of our technology efforts and try and learn from each other. And as part of this session with Databricks to Open, we're going to talk about a specific use case that Nasdaq has developed to try and utilize Delta Share and how it helps empowers our clients. All right, so a little bit about Nasdaq itself. I'm sure many of you have heard of Nasdaq, probably more familiar with Nasdaq dealing with exchanges and whatnot all around the world. Really, we have lots of different technology that help power the business. We really consider ourselves more of a technology company. We have lots of different data businesses within our organizations, and DataLink is part of one of several data businesses. DataLink was previously Quandl. I'm not sure, show of hands, anyone happen to remember Quandl? Okay, great. So Quandl was acquired by Nasdaq in 2019, and it's since been rebranded to DataLink. So our reach, we've started out as, startup world, really just trying to be the Wikipedia of data, and that was the use case, and it's certainly evolved over the years. The solution at the time was really trying to focus on bringing data to end users in a very simple and novel way through REST APIs. You can go to the site, discover data, browse, search, review the documentation, bring it down, use our SDKs. We have a plethora of community-provided SDKs. We have in-house developed SDKs. The platform itself sources data from many places. We try and clean it up, bring it onto the platform, find the alpha, create a product that users can consume and use. In terms of, well, how we deliver it, we really have two main use cases of consumption. That is through our REST APIs, like I mentioned before. We also have a SQL interface. The SQL interface is, well, very much similar to what you might expect from, say, a DB SQL or whatnot. Really, the goal there is to try and make it simple in terms of expanding the toolbox for those who are trying to consume the data. When it comes to APIs, it's somewhat limiting. Most people end up trying to consume the data and then have to load it into something else. In order to, now being cheeky here with the data link platform, really the point of the talk is to really chat about Delta sharing, so I'll get to that. But there are three main tiers of data that we like to source. There's market data that's internal. We have alternative data, which overlaps with our partner data because, of course, we source things from lots of different places. The alternative data is really a key pivot for the business where, as we're gaining steam, we're able to deliver products that we're focusing on alpha. So with that, Delta sharing, when it comes to data links usage, problems started emerging. The data started growing much bigger over time. The data that we would onboard into our system would be gigs of data. And as we would onboard various sets of data sets that we would partner from various locations, things just grew and grew and grew. The landscape completely changed. It made it incredibly difficult with the tools that we have today to share this data with various groups, whether it be hedge funds, whatnot. And the current solutions, like what we've tried, we have solutions right now to deliver data, but you have to do a lot of extra work. And the point of Delta sharing is that it does things in a way with its APIs where it's a unified format. It's in Parquet. It's more modern. It's a standardized format that everyone can contribute to, build on top of, and use. And it just made a lot of sense to try and pivot and start introducing this into our platform and actually delivering data using this protocol. So we can deliver data today in CSVs as archives, and we do this as an offline sort of batch process, which is only so useful because at the end of the day, you're still on the hook for uncompressing a file and storing it somewhere else. The other hard use case too is a lot of people still need and want to use SFTP. That's probably never going to go away. We still support and do it. We need it to be kind of a first-class citizen where people come to the platform and then, you get your account and then boom, you have your SFTP. But it requires a bit of overhead at the moment. And then, of course, there's S3. Yes, of course, we happen to operate on AWS. We have S3, but there's a lot of overhead in dealing with cross-account. Why do that? It's a lot of pain. Delta Share actually helps unlock and reduces all of the overhead associated with all of those sorts of use cases. So specifically, we have products that are quite large. We have US tick history, and I'm now going to go into some of the architecture in how we actually bothered to deliver, because how did we develop this solution to actually get Delta Share to work for our particular use cases? So I will go into the requirements in a moment, but I'm just going to share the overall landscape of, well, how did we try to develop Delta Share to open in the first place? Hopefully it's not too blurry. I don't know. Anyhow, so there's actually two flows that are happening in this diagram. It's probably better as a sequence diagram, but ideally, the first part of this is at the center with the data link manager. This is a part that I'm going to assume people have already done. This is assuming we've already loaded the data into Databricks as part of a product. We are going to entitle a particular user who has purchased the data from the platform, say they're interested in US tech history. They've gone through the sales cycle. We've performed a grant and permission. So because data link existed well before, say, Unity Catalog, we have our own entitlement system. So this introduces another layer of challenges that I suspect most other organizations face when dealing with an integration of bringing Databricks into their own platform. So we have to kind of work around that, and we end up pushing a lot of our entitlements to Unity Catalog to help with that governance aspect. So there's a bit of overhead there, but we try to work around it. The more interesting piece, though, is really the user consumption. So this is the data recipient. So the data recipient in this case is interacting with our platform the way it usually does. Users, when they create an account, they get an API key. They interact with the data by doing API calls using the SDKs and whatnot. In this case, we have another type of API. It kind of breaks the contract a bit when it comes to the Delta sharing protocol. But this is kind of the trade-off we had to deal with when it comes to some of the business requirements, which I'll get to in a moment. So our gateway is helping to limit really abuse patterns that we've observed over the years. So when it comes to our clients, they want all the data. They don't care about anything else. We have data, and at the end of the day, they're starting from either nothing, because they want to start from scratch, or they're trying to do some kind of back test for the purposes of some kind of like quant analysis. So if you're starting from nothing, you need to get everything. So of course, you're going to ask for everything. Like, why would you do any sort of analysis if you're just going to ask for data and only receive parts of it? But the problem that the business faces is, well, okay, if we provide a share, and how often is someone going to be downloading that data over and over again? Because it turns out there's no real signal to say, well, when has data been updated? Or is there anything that I'm missing? And it turns out there's a lot of abusive patterns. So that pattern emerged, so we ended up putting in rate limiting on top of this, so that when users make a request, we go through, do some business logic, make sure, okay, have you downloaded this too many times? We're also interested in some billing requirements and stuff. So in terms of the flow, we end up going to some of our entitlement systems, dynamically creating tables and views, and this pushes the predicates into Unity Catalog and dynamically setting up the share. Once the share is created, the protocol, the Delta sharing protocol, will then return back all of the files that a user is interested in downloading. We store this in our own system so that we can cache it a bit, so that if they do any sort of repeated requests, we allow them to download it to like a maximum amount, something that's trying to be somewhat fair. There are use cases where not everyone, based on their locality, can actually download everything, so we want to make sure that the expiration times that are given on the underlying protocol, where the files may only be valid for about an hour, they can still get them and download them in time. So again, just going over some of the business requirements, we really wanted to take large amounts of data, allow users to actually download it, and put in a bit of a restriction to help reduce the amount of abuse that was typically happening on the platform. The other thing too is we're very concerned about egress costs. We were caught up on trying to use E2, but for this particular implementation, we couldn't use it. And then of course, there were other considerations as well, where it's like, okay, well, why not just use, requester pays, right? You're eventually going to get an S3 URI anyway. You can parallelize that as you're downloading it. Why not? Well, again, this is an area of trade-offs. We wanted to make sure that clients who end up, accessing our data, they don't have to just be on AWS, right? So, and then of course, devil's in the details. As we're implementing this thing, we've always run across some hiccups. Some of those hiccups deal with limits. You need to know your limits. Databricks has some. We had to work around some of this. We have some table limits, share limits, and as people are requesting these shares, we actually have to go through and create extra work for ourselves to clean this up and do some removal of these shares that are either expired or no longer being used, just so that we can help try and stay in our limits. So with that, happy to go and do a bit of a demo. It's pre-recorded, so I'm kind of cheating. Let's see, try and make this bigger. All right, so what are we looking at? Full screen. Come on, full screen. Not going full screen. All right, anyhow, so what's happened here is, it's awkward. All right, so the very top, if you caught it, I created a client, and in that client, just rewind it real quick. So I'm being cheeky. So what I'm not showing is the exact kind of request parameters, because there's, I don't want to expose my API key. But what I'm doing is I'm asking this client, which is set up, hard-coded, to ask for US tick history, which is a product that we offer, where you can download, quotes across various markets. I'm asking for quotes between a certain date range. It could be anything. You can provide any sort of predicate, time before whatever kind of Allen's interval that you want. In this case, I'm asking for 4 tickers and date range. Okay, great. The volume of data for this particular product per day is hundreds of gigs. In this use case, I'm only downloading less than that, simply because I'm, putting in all of these predicates. But what's nice is that we're creating these dynamic views. And what you're seeing the client do, it's very hard to read, but we're retrying. What you're observing is that we've made a request. We've gone to Databricks, said, hey, I want these files shared. We're waiting for Databricks to help generate the files. And then once they're ready, the client receives them, and now I'm able to download. Now, I've sped this up a bit. You probably don't want to watch my home internet speeds, but you are observing how they are. And this is, how one can then receive the files. Now, downloading stuff isn't super interesting. Watching a progress bar is one thing, but once you have it, then of course I'm going to show some examples of visualization of what you can do. Of course, once you have it in your own ecosystem, then of course you can load it however you want. If it's on S3, put it in your Databricks. This is a notebook example. All right, visualization of this particular data. I have another tool that we use internally. It's Market Replay. Basically, again, just another example of visualization. And then finally, we have another use case in terms of visualization options. We heavily rely on Excel. It's likely never going away. Now, you obviously aren't going to put terabytes of data into Excel, but for many of our clients, the use case is actually, yes, they're dealing with derived data. So in this case, what you're observing, now this plugin that you're looking at is actually developed by our good friends over at Exponum. They're actually here this year. Roger and Herman are over at booth 108. If you have a chance to talk to them, they're fantastic, salt-of-the-earth people. They helped upgrade our Excel plugin. Now here you can see that it's retrieved some data, set some predicates, downloaded it. And in terms of visualization in Excel, well, of course, you can use your own imagination for that, but instead, we're going to create a pivot table. And the cool thing about the Exponum plugin is that they actually have Delta Share built into their Excel plugin. You can use the Exponum Connect, and if you happen to have a Delta Share, of course, you can use their tool to help reach out and fetch the Delta Share directly. And here it is. All right. And with that, that is the Nasdaq use case for using Delta to open. Thank you very much.